Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia, was killed in 1947. This is one of the greatest unsolved crimes in Los Angeles. It was not only a horrible crime, but it has also been famously hard to solve. What do we know about this case? Well, let's get to it. Lizzie Short's body was found in the Los Angeles area of Leimert Park on January 15, 1947. On a morning walk with her child, a mother was the first to report seeing the gross sight. The woman said that, at first, the way Short's body was set made her think it was a mannequin. But when they looked more closely, they saw how horrifying the Black Dahlia crime scene was. There was no more blood in Short, who was 22 years old. She had been cut in half at the waist. A few of her innards, like her intestines, had been taken out and neatly put under her buttocks. Her legs and breasts had pieces of flesh cut off of them. There was poop in her stomach, which made some people think she was forced to eat it before she was killed. The cuts on her face, though, were the scariest features of her body. The killer cut her face on each side from the corners of her mouth to her ears, making what is called a Glasgow smile. Police in Los Angeles decided that she must have been killed somewhere else and then dumped in Leimert Park because the body had already been cleaned. Detectives found a heel print and a cement bag with blood on it next to her body. It was likely that these items were used to move her body to the empty lot. To help them figure out who the body belonged to, the LAPD asked the FBI to check their fingerprint database. Short's fingerprints were found quickly because she had applied for a job as a clerk at the U.S. store. She was then caught drinking while being underage by the Santa Barbara Police Department, which is why her prints were found a second time. This happened just 7 months after she got the job. The FBI also gave the press a picture of her from when she was arrested. Soon, the media started to report on every scandalous thing they could find out about Short. Phoebe Short, Elizabeth Short's mother, didn't find out about her daughter's death until writers from the Los Angeles Examiner called her and said Elizabeth had won a beauty contest. They pressed her for as much information as they could find out about Elizabeth before telling her the terrible truth. Her daughter had been killed, and the body had been hacked up in horrible ways. The press gets involved in the Black Dahlia murder investigation. The media started to call Elizabeth Short a sexual pervert as they learned more about her past. At the time of her death, this victim knew at least 50 men, and at least 25 men had been seen with her in the 60 days before she died. She was known as a teaser of men. People called Short the Black Dahlia because she was said to like wearing a lot of sheer black clothes. This was a nod to the new movie, The Blue Dahlia. Others spread the false idea that Short was a prostitute, and still others said she liked to tease guys because she was a lesbian. Short was said to be a Hollywood hopeful, which added to her mystery. She worked as a waitress in Los Angeles after moving there 6 months before she died. But even though the case was very well known, the police had a very hard time finding out who was responsible. There were, however, some hints that the reporters got. A call from someone saying they were the killer came to the Examiner on January 21, about a week after the body was found. They said they would send Short's things in the mail as proof of their claim. Soon after, on the 24th, the Examiner got a package with pictures, business cards, Short's birth certificate, and an address book with Mark Hansen's name on the cover. The letter, which was made up of newspaper and magazine clippings stuck together, said, "Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers, here is Dahlia's belongings letter to follow." No fingerprints were on any of these things because they had all been cleaned with gasoline. Even though a partial fingerprint was found on the package, it was damaged during shipping and was never looked at. Another letter came on January 26. "Here it is," the note said by hand. "Going on Wednesday, January 29 at 10 a.m. Had fun with the cops. Black Dahlia Avenger. The letter gave me a place to meet. The police waited at the set time and place, but the writer never showed up. After the crime, the suspected killer sent the Examiner a note made of magazine letters that said, "I've changed my mind. You wouldn't deal with me fairly." The killing of Dahlia was right. Once more, gasoline had cleaned everything that person sent so that detectives couldn't get any fingerprints off of the goods. At one point, more than 750 LAPD detectives were working on the case, and more than 150 possible killers of the Black Dahlia were questioned. During the first investigation, police heard more than 60 statements, but none of them were believed to be true. There have been more than 500 statements since then, but no one has been charged. When the case went cold, many people thought that the Black Dahlia murder was just a bad date, or that Short had met a scary stranger while walking alone late at night. The Black Dahlia murder case is still open after more than 70 years. But a few interesting and scary ideas have come to light in the past few years. Steve Hodel, a retired LAPD officer, was going through his late father's things soon after he died in 1999 and saw two photos of a woman who looked a lot like Elizabeth Short. When Hodel found these scary pictures, he started to use the skills he had learned as a police officer to look into the death of his own father. Hodel looked through old newspapers and talked to witnesses about the case. He even used the Freedom of Information Act to get FBI files on the Black Dahlia murder. He also had someone who knows a lot about handwriting look at samples of his father's writing and compare them to the writing on some notes sent to the press by the killer. The research showed that there was a good chance that the handwriting belonged to his father, but it wasn't certain. The Black Dahlia crime scene pictures showed that Short's body had been cut in a way that looked like a hemicorporectomy, which is a medical procedure that cuts the body below the lumbar spine. Hodel's dad was a doctor and went to medical school in the 1930s when this type of surgery was taught. Hodel also looked through his father's records at UCLA and found a folder full of receipts for work that had been contracted out on his childhood house. A receipt for a big bag of concrete from a few days before the murder was found in that folder. It was the same size and brand of concrete bag that was found near Elizabeth Short's body. For Hodel to start his probe, many of the police officers who had worked on the case before were already dead. That being said, he carefully reconstructed the talks these officers had about the case. Hodel finally put all of his proof together in a book called Black Dahlia Avenger, The True Story, which became a big hit in 2003. Steve Lopez, a writer for the Los Angeles Times, asked for official police files from the case to check the book's facts and found something very important. Soon after the murder, the LAPD had 6 main suspects. George Hodel was one of them. He was such a strong suspect that the cops bugged his house in 1950 to keep an eye on what he was doing. A lot of the sound was harmless, but one scary conversation stood out. 8:25 p.m. A woman screamed. The woman screamed again. It's important to note that the woman wasn't heard before the scream. The Black Dahlia case is still open, even after this shocking new information that seems to back the idea that George Hodel killed Short, and maybe also his secretary. Steve Hodel is still looking into his father, though. He says that he has found clues from dozens of other deaths that could be linked to his father. This means that his father is not only suspected of killing the Black Dahlia, but also of being a crazy serial killer. Hodel's study has even caught the attention of the police. In 2004, Stephen R. K., who was the head deputy for LA County, said that he would have enough evidence against George Hodel to charge him with killing Elizabeth Short if he were still alive. In 2017, British author Pugh Eatwell said she had finally solved the case that had been open for decades. Her book, Black Dahlia, Red Rose: The Crime, Corruption, and Cover-Up of America's Greatest Unsolved Murder, resulted from her research. She said that Leslie Dillon was really guilty. Police briefly thought he was the main suspect, but eventually let him go. She did say, though, that there was a lot more to the story than just the killer. Eatwell says that Dillon, who was a bellhop, killed Short at the request of Mark Hansen, the owner of a nearby bar and movie theater where Dillon worked. One more suspect who was finally freed was Hansen. He was the owner of the address book that was sent to the Examiner. Ultimately, he said he gave Short the address book as a gift. Hansen was said to have stayed with Short for a few nights, and he was one of the last people to talk to her on the phone before she died on January 8. Eatwell says Hansen was interested in Short and tried to hit on her, but she turned him down. Then, he supposedly told Leslie Dillon to take care of her. Hansen must have known Dillon was crazy enough to kill someone, but he didn't know how crazy. Through looking at police records, Eatwell also learned that Dillon knew things about the crime that were not public yet. One detail was that Short had a tattoo of a rose on her thigh, which had been cut out and shoved inside her vagina. For his part, Dillon said he wanted to be a crime writer and told the police that he was writing a book about the Dahlia case, but it never came out. Dillon was never charged with a crime, even though a lot of proof pointed to him. Eatwell says he was let go because Mark Hansen knows some LAPD officers. Eatwell thinks that the department was already dishonest, and she also thinks that Hansen made it even worse by taking advantage of his connections with some cops. We still don't know for sure who killed the Black Dahlia, but these new ideas make strong cases. It's also possible that the truth is still out there, ready to be found by the right investigation. What intrigues you most about this video? Let's hear in the comments section. If you'd like to see more videos like this, give this one a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.